Hey, Instagram and YouTube, it's Gordon Miller. Welcome to Live at, 5:30. So sorry about that. I unfortunately was held up and been trying to work on finalizing an opportunity that we have. And so unfortunately my call ran long. So anyway, today is video 151. Just like the proof of alcohol that they outlawed in our state, so college kids wouldn't get drunk as hell. So I thought that based on the input that we got, we had interest from a friend of mine, Emmy, who said, we should do a whole nother video on the immaturity of the human male, and so I thought that was actually a good idea. So let's see. I think M is already here, and hey M, how you doing?
Good. Hold on. Can you see me?
I think the camera's turned around the other way. There we go. How are you doing? I love the
I'm
purple.
good.
I love the purple headphones. It's a good look for you.
Oh, thank you. They're my kids.
So the topic came up the other day about guys don't mature mentally and emotionally. They mature much later than women do. Women typically are emotionally and mentally mature right around the 19 to 21 range, which I think is pretty reasonable. And research has shown that the average male, and this is the average, so that's pretty scary. But the average is for men is between 25 and 29, depending on everything from socioeconomic to race to a bunch of other things. I mean, there are different factors that play a role in what the overall thing is, how they were raised, the environment they were raised in, things like that. So it really just depends. And of course, I made the comment, which I love to make, which is, most guys don't mature until 25 to 29, if ever. And so you seem to enjoy that comment. So you may have witnessed some of this, extended immaturity personally. So I thought it was only reasonable to let's talk about it. I mean, I think it's something that I don't think people talk about it enough, and I think it's a situation that I think a lot of guys are doing themselves a serious disservice. I mean, I don't know if it's some sort of mental illness or some sort of issue with how people are raised or what, but it certainly is something worth talking about because there is ample evidence that the average woman in her 20s is dating somebody 8 years older is what the research says. It's about 8 years older than they are because they're just fed up with the immature human male in their 20s, frankly. And not every guy in their 20s is going to be like that. But what are your thoughts?
From my personal experience, I've always dated guys that have been 2 to 3 years older, which would kind of match up with what you're saying in terms of maturity. I'm curious. It seems like the numbers are a little bit low, though. I guess 19 to 21. When you say maturity,
Well, it's both the
go
higher
ahead.
reasoning functions, and it's the higher reasoning functions that lead to emotional and mental decision making, judgment, things like that
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
typically contribute
Life
to
decisions.
immaturity. What's that?
Life decisions.
Yeah, I mean, and it's that they've linked that component of cognitive processing has more to do or contributes more to the immaturity of the individual than anything else. I mean, their upbringing and cultural things and other things play a whole major role as well, socioeconomic and other stuff too. But they're saying that it's that development of that cognitive reasoning function and that higher decision making and things like that is unfortunately delayed in men that is the cause for a significant portion of guys who just are sort of eternally immature and so no.
Yeah. I mean, I see a lot of, just from my own personal experience and my friends' experiences, guys that seem to be a little bit more on the selfish side. So I don't know how you categorize that, but
Well, I think that's immaturity. I mean, because I mean, obviously, I guess what I see is I see people complaining more. I see women complaining more about how immature the guys are starting about age 22 or 23 also. It just until you look at social media posts and stuff like that. And once they graduate college, they went through that whole, okay, I went to the frat party and blah blah blah, and the party life eventually gets old. About senior year, you realize maybe you better buckle down and learn something. But
right.
and so I see the women being more career oriented by their junior or senior year, and they realize, like
Mhm.
college is like half over, and I better get some shit out of this, because like I got to go, do something else next. And I don't see
Yeah,
guys.
and yeah, I think it's also empowerment too, because you don't want to rely on a man for these reasons, right? You don't
Right?
want to be in a situation where you're. I mean, some women feel comfortable doing that depending on the spouse they find, but I found more than not that if they find the wrong spouse, they're in a situation where they feel trapped, and they maybe they didn't push forward in their career because they said, okay, this man's going to take care of me, and now they feel trapped because they don't have a career path put forward. So lessons learned, women talk, and then they decide, okay, I'm going to make sure that I set forward this career path, and that I'm not going to have to rely on a man, whether I go into nursing or medical field or business or whatever it is that can secure them in a future, and that they can have their family life, and they can also make sure that they're secure without being dependent on a man.
Yeah, for sure. I completely get that. I mean, I think that's a major, a major function. And I think that they used to joke back in the '80s about a lot of women were getting their MRS degree. They were at college to meet their future husband, and they were getting married a lot younger, and things like that. And you talk to a lot of the millennials today, and most of them don't have any real function for marriage. I mean, in terms of that, it's not just the independence that they're seeking, but it's also they seem to enjoy the independence. I mean, women are a lot more independent right now than I think they probably have ever been. I mean, in this generation. And I don't know if it's out of necessity in terms of, look, I'm not gonna I don't want that, it's like I don't want somebody to take care of me. I don't I and it's funny too, because I mentioned, well, what about kids, and they're like, well, I don't have to get married to have a kid. That's pretty biologically pretty easy. So it's so I mean, marriage doesn't even seem to be a necessary component of having a family anymore, and things like that. But I mean, being a single mother is probably the hardest job on the planet. I mean, I have an enormous amount of respect for all the single mothers who are either single by choice, single by force, or single by design. And I helped raise three kids in a two-parent household, and that was hard. I mean, going from two kids to three kids was, going from man to zone. And but it's
Yeah.
even one kid's tough. I mean, because you've got responsibilities, and you're the only one making an income and stuff like that. It's tough.
Yeah, and you want to find a positive, role model in your child's life. So, if that first, spouse didn't work out, then you're looking for siblings, you're looking for cousins, you're looking for a
Right.
community to help with that. So, you're constantly on that and you're on just the daily grind, you're doing all the household stuff. You're monitoring the schoolwork. If you have a special needs child, you're monitoring that.
Right.
And so it's complicated, and I think I have some friends that went through situations where they were dependent on their spouse, and then they had to go back to school in their 30s, and going back to school in their 30s is no joke with kids. That's tough. And as a teacher, I have three jobs, admittedly. Two of them are teaching jobs online, but many of my students in I guess in both courses are older, and when I say older, I mean over 30,
Right.
late 30s, early 40s, professionals, and they're going back to school to get a second degree, So, and it's tough for them. I think it's tougher for them than being an undergraduate and having other minimal responsibilities, because you don't have a family and you don't have to, you're not accountable to that. So, I think that's a big issue.
I think childcare is the hardest component of that. I mean, it's not from what I hear from my friends who have multiple kids and they're a single mother, because their ex was just a moron, the hardest thing, she doesn't mind working two full-time jobs, but that's 16 hours, or that's 80 hours a week, usually 60 to 80 hours a week is what she tries to work. And she has to work at night so that, the kids are sleeping, and you got to figure out how in the world you're going to, who's going to watch the kids. And the cost of childcare is roughly half, if you're lucky, what the cost of going to work is. So, you're working one job just to pay for, the childcare,
Right.
so you can work the first job. I mean, it's a vicious cycle. I mean, I think it's horrible. I mean, it makes it very tough for women to succeed on their own, if they have kids, or even if they don't, but I think having kids, and then having guys just simply disappear, where now it's no longer fun or convenient or, necessary for them to hang around. So they just disappear. It's like, okay, well, that must be nice for you. But, so.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking for a babysitter last week, just to get basic work done, and the babysitters around here are charging $20 an hour.
Damn, $20 an hour. That's.
I was like, should I just get another iPad?
That's right, exactly. I don't know, man. That's a bit steep. So.
You need another job.
I know, right? I mean, at least I know where to what to look for. So, but the funny thing about that is, I think, first of all, I think that's kind of high. I think the going rate right now, at least what I hear from the various college students that have contributed content to the business model that I was looking at for for childcare. It's between 11. I think 11 is low. 11 and $16 an hour. Most families pay between 12 and 15, and so which I think is actually pretty fair. I mean, $12 an hour isn't so bad, but my God, $20 an hour. I mean, can you do my dishes and my laundry while we're at it? I mean, maybe so. I mean, I don't know, but I mean, good Lord, that seems like something.
Yeah, it seems to be the going right here in Montgomery County.
Is that Montgomery County, Maryland, or is that Montgomery County, Maryland? Yeah.
Montgomery County, Maryland.
So you're in the People's Republic of Maryland. So that's that explains.
I'm literally right across from the NIH.
Oh yeah, well I spent.
You can see it from the house.
I spent 2 years there in Bethesda. So with our NIH contract. So yeah, but no, I mean it's I enjoyed that place. I mean, I was at Ruth Chris every night, so it was great. But I enjoy that area right there, and it was a great place to hang out for a couple of years. And we worked with a contract with NIH for 10 years, but I spent 2 solid years up there in the middle of that every week, so it was great. But taxes are high and cost of living is high up there, so I can understand why they're trying to go for that. So.
Yeah, yeah. It's tough.
You got somebody that said, "Too bad I don't live in Maryland. I would babysit Emmett for you." There you go. Well, thanks, Georgia. I appreciate that. Now, Georgia, do
I
you and
think
M
that's
know
one of
each other
my,
already? So, I mean,
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
good. So, if it's going to be a little creepy with people offer to watch your son, I just, it's, you might get all sorts of offers here. So, but anyway, so I mean, I think so you mentioned a couple things that I wanted to touch on. So you talked about positive male role models in your children's lives when your spouse decides they're going to exit stage left, and I think that's really an important factor. I think so many women that I know of that have kids who have been married once or twice, and things like that, they're like, "Fuck it, I'm done," and I'm like, you can't be done. I mean, you can't not have some kind of stable male person in your son or daughter's life. I mean, that's kind of tough. I mean, at least on the kid. But I do understand. I mean, if you've tried a couple times and failed, I can certainly understand not wanting to try again. But you know,
Yeah, my cousin, my cousin who's like my best friend, um, she's had a lot of trouble with this, and um, she has her father who's aging and not a lot of other support. So,
yeah,
she has friends and their husbands that kind of will sit in as a male role model. But other than that, it's I think it's just been real hard for her.
I think
So,
it's tough too. I mean, as the father of three boys, I think it's important that there is a positive male influence in a boy's life so that they understand. I mean, I've been with my wife for 22 years. Our kids are 20, 18, and 14, and but the thing that I think seems to be the most powerful part of that experience is just the boys learn how to treat their future girlfriends and wives and things like that from the guys that are that they're in the relationship with, and they're, how their father treats their mother and things like that. And so if you don't have a positive situation, then it's very difficult. I know that. I mean, I know a number of people that have gotten caught up in just horribly abusive relationships, physically abusive, verbally abusive, substance abuse, things like that, where they end up with somebody in their life that is it's just chaos, and the kids don't need that. I mean, that's I think counterproductive as well, and then there's the problem if you have a daughter that the first person that the daughter learns to connect with, she has a relationship with, first male figure in her life, is usually her father. And so if you don't have that relationship from early on, it's tough because she doesn't get the kind of positive male attention that will lead her to getting more positive male attention, or seek more positive male attention in the future. And unfortunately, I find that too many people that grew up in a single parent household where their father was either never in their life or not in their life very often, or it wasn't a very positive experience, even if they were in their life, or even if they were there and it wasn't a very positive experience, then unfortunately they're willing to seek even negative male attention than not to have any male attention at all. And so that's kind of heartbreaking.
yeah. Wait, so do you have any daughters? You don't have any daughters.
Mm.
It's just one.
No,
Yeah.
no, my God, like they say God doesn't give you anything you can't handle. So it's It's one of those kind of things where I think I would ruin my daughter's life. I would be, for me, she can stay chained to her bed in her room. The 40 foot of chain would let her, at least make it to the bathroom and stuff. But for me, and it's so funny. I said that to somebody one time, and they took offense at it, which I'm sure people will. But and they said, well, if you raise your daughter the same way you raise your sons, as if there wasn't any difference, and what would that be like? And I said, well, I taught the kids, basic, moral values, judgment for right or wrong. They got taught martial arts and self-defense. They learned how to shoot and things like that. And so this 23-year-old was like, so what would okay, so let's say you did all that for your daughter. I mean, wouldn't you trust her judgment and her ability to defend herself and things like that? And I go, well, you got a point. So, it's hard not to take some of those comments to heart. So while I joke about how rough I would have been, I would like to think that I would have struck the same balance I did. I mean, we've never locked down the internet or things like that. We tried to help our kids understand what they should and shouldn't be doing, and we've made it very clear where that line is. And sometimes you have to give the kids enough rope to hang themselves, metaphorically, not literally. But it's one of those kind of things where you can't protect them from everything on the internet or everything in the world. What's in the world is out there, and what's on the internet is out there, and they'll come across it eventually. So I'd like to think that I would have made good choices and been a positive influence if I had had a daughter. But jury's still out on that.
Yeah, I mean, they find good things on the internet and they find bad things on the internet, right? Like my son is following this guy, and he was like, just all the rage now is like following the guys that play video games.
Right, of course, yeah. All the guys that are 40
Right.
that live at home in their mom's basement that make videos for 12-year-old boys.
He lives like a mile from his mom in a townhouse, but like
Right.
same thing, right?
Right.
And like
No, there's nothing creepy about that, right? So.
Right. But he had a pedometer, and then my son was obsessed with the pedometer. He became obsessed with the pedometer and wanted to get steps. Awesome. Right?
Right.
But then, like, the following week, he got a radar gun. So now we have our radar gun, and we sit on the porch, and we're shooting people in the neighborhood.
Nice.
Our next-door neighbor comes in the yard, and I was like, hey, how you doing? And she's like, good. And I'm like, Emmett got a radar gun. She's like, I saw it.
That's funny.
Yup.
That is
So,
funny.
yeah, so, some good things. And, but, yeah, you can't protect him from who knows what else. He drops the F-bomb. I don't know if it's from me or if it's from the internet. I'd like to think it's from the internet.
Well, right. I mean, I think, it's so funny, too, because, my oldest was born in 2000, and right at the height of Dr. Dre and Eminem and 50 Cent, stuff like that. And so my wife wouldn't let me play the unedited lyrics, the explicit lyrics version of stuff. And so I had to get two copies. So my 6-disc changer in the car had 3 albums in it, 3 CDs in it. The explicit version followed by the unexplicit version, and so it was funny. We would hit the odd tracks every time the kids got in the car and things like that. And it was funny that on Dr. Dre's Chronic 2001 album, I got the instrumental version and used to play it. And my oldest son was 4 in 2004 before he realized there were actually words to the song. So it was pretty funny. So
Yeah.
well, good.
Yeah.
So how is Emmett doing? Is he doing well?
Yeah, he's doing really good. I mean, he's in remission right now from he has neurofibromatosis, which is a mutation, and it's a germline mutation, so he's born with it. It predisposes him to uh, different indications. He had some brain gliomas from it when he was just about to turn 3. Went through chemotherapy. He will have a higher risk of different other malignancies throughout his life. Most of them benign.
Right.
In his later childhood, some hematologic malignancies, blood cancers, which would be I would say the highest risk for him, but still on the rare side.
I know he's been through a lot. I mean, I've followed your post for some time now, and it's been a couple of years.
He's doing really good. He's a really happy kid. I'm kind of an optimist, and he's very smart. His dad is very smart. His dad is super detail oriented, and he's really gotten the best of both of us. So,
well, that's good.
So I'm really happy about that. He just, being an only child right now, he's going crazy. So I'm trying to get him outside as much as possible. Been teaching him how to fish. And I think that teaches patience, because kids, I don't know about other kids, but my kid just wants everything immediately, and so try to get him to sit down, wait for the fish.
Yeah. Well, I don't blame him. Fishing's never been one of my favorites for the exact same reason. It's like, I'd rather be.
Immediate satisfaction.
I prefer when they bring you the salmon on a plate, with a nice cream sauce. It's rather than.
Turn on ESPN too, because Bassmasters is on now, and you can see them reeling. They show the clips. They're reeling them in, and the guys are grabbing the fish out of the water. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, in fact,
I see your face right now. Okay,
no,
you're like.
Well, no, I mean a friend of mine, their son is on that circuit and makes a pretty decent living fishing. But it is what it is. That's pretty funny.
I don't know about making a living fishing, but it's pretty relaxing and fun when you get one on the line. You're reeling it in. But I grew up on a lake, so that's kind of my MO.
Yeah, no, I get that.
But yeah. So we're trying, both me and Rob have been trying to expose him to different things, and just see what he likes. These you don't know what your kid's going to be like, right? Like, I don't want to push him in any direction. Whatever he seems to like, we go with. He was into martial arts for a little while, so we went with that, and then he wasn't into it. I made him finish up a little bit of time, kind of pushed him
right
over to what he wanted, and then once he kept persistently saying he didn't want to do it, then we stopped. Then now he's into music, and his dad loves music and plays guitar, and he likes the drums, and so they do that together. That's how they bond and connect, and one of the ways they spend time with each other. So, we have our relationships with him and how we help him grow. And he loves to build things. And so, we're just watching him unfold. I'm sure you have older kids, so
yep.
You just kind of watch them unfold. They're all, kids are all different, and I'm not trying to push him in any direction, but he really has a wide variety of interests. So it's really awesome to watch.
Well, one of the things I think is interesting about the way you've approached it, I think that's the right way, is you have to let them try a whole bunch of stuff and then let them figure out for themselves what they are good at and then what they enjoy. I mean, even though they're good at something doesn't mean they're necessarily going to enjoy it. And then for us, like my oldest wanted to be, for the longest time wanted to go to aerospace engineering school. And ironically, he picked the same school that I was accepted to, early decision, and then I decided to go somewhere else. But, he came to us one night and said, hey, I'd like to go to Embry-Riddle for aerospace engineering. I'm like, well, that's kind of funny because that's where I actually was accepted to, and they have probably the best program in the country for aerospace engineering. And it's right down there by NASA, down in Florida, Daytona, and near Cape Canaveral. And I mean, I already had, even before I signed up, or even before I got accepted, I had already had a summer job set up with Martin Marietta and stuff like that. So it was great. I mean, it was and through kind of peeling back the layers of his interest in the last year or two, he really became more interested in finance, and he was really great at computational mathematics, but he has this gift for being able to see an array of numbers and then pick out the pattern, same way I can. And so, obviously, looking at things like a balance sheet, if you know what you're looking at and you can pick out the patterns that'll help, he can do in 30 seconds what takes somebody like 2 hours worth of hardcore analysis to do on a financial statement. And so, I mean, it's led to.
He likes that.
He does. I mean, it's like he sees this in his head, and it sort of automatically makes sense to him. And he got a really coveted internship with KPMG for next summer, and things like that. He was one of 2,800 people that applied for that one position. So it's an amazing opportunity to watch the kids sort of find what they're really good at and then be really good at it and really enjoy doing that. And our middle one was really interested in video game design since he was like 9. And when he was 11, I had a friend of mine owns a video game studio. So my son designed a game, and we scanned all the things he drew by hand and put it together into a proposal in PowerPoint, and sent the PowerPoint off. And we got this really great letter on letterhead and stuff like that back from the studio, and they're encouraging him, suggesting some changes and encouraging him to pursue what he wanted, and so. But in the meantime, though, he began doing a lot of mechanical and electrical engineering, and so we're like, why would you ever think about doing video game design? I mean, you are so good at mechanical and electrical engineering. And he was like, well, I really enjoy doing that mechanical electrical engineering stuff. I'm really good at it. I really enjoy it. I kind of want to do that as a hobby. I'm like, well, son, why don't you do that as what you're going to do? And then, everything you do all day long, every day, will be, stuff you enjoy. And if you really enjoy video games, then play them or build them or whatever in your spare time. And my youngest, I've been building with him. You mentioned Emmett loves building. I've been building with Taylor since he was, 3, and we build stuff and knock it down and build something else, and things like that. And he wants to go into the architecture program at Virginia Tech, which is where I got my master's. And it's great. I mean, it's great to help the kids find what they're really good at, and then kind of not push them in a direction, but help guide them, because they're gonna, they want to go over here sometimes, and you got to kind of steer them back on, into the right path. Where, and so it was kind of touch and go for all the kids there for a while. But at 13, my youngest even did the tour at Virginia Tech, and they're like, so you're kind of young to be starting next year. And he goes, no, I'm applying like 4 years from now, but it's all good. So it was funny.
Yeah.
So, but that's the joy of watching.
It's amazing to watch them. So,
yeah. Now, how old is Emmett now?
Yeah, he's 6. But I was just thinking about my cousins that are like in their early 20s, and when I was in college, they were like toddlers, and they would like walk over with like a bunny at the Thanksgiving table, and I was like, oh, they're so cute. And now they're like in law school, you know what I mean?
Right.
And I'm like, oh my gosh,
yeah,
it's amazing.
Oh no, that's great. But
yeah.
Well, so any other thoughts on the perpetual immaturity of men? I titled the video "Man Bashing and Other Fun Things." So we weren't.
We got off track. No, I noticed a lot of my friends have I've dated guys that turn out to be like alcoholics, unsuspecting to them.
Right.
I think substance abuse is a big problem, obviously, but
Right.
they don't realize it, and then all of a sudden, it's like, but I love him, and
Oh
the
yeah.
guy's like wasted all the time, or, just losing his job, and they're like a really high operating female, really high functioning female, and what are you doing with this guy?
Yeah, no, I mean, so I have a couple of thoughts on that. So my father was a just a horrific alcoholic. I mean, says the guy with the Grey Goose vodka here, mm, so no, thankfully,
Well, it is 6 o'clock. Okay,
well,
I'm
right,
talking about like a
right,
drink at lunch. Like
it's
you wake up, you're agitated.
that's right,
You're driving. You pick your kids up from school at 3 o'clock, and
that's
you're
right,
buzzed. You know what I'm saying?
that's right. I try not to drink before noon, so because at noon it's at least 5 o'clock in London. So
Yeah.
but no, but and I also, I mean, growing up around that, you see, how just counterproductive and how self-destructive that is. When my father died, he had 58 points on his license from, multiple DUIs and, things like that.
How is that even possible? Don't they just take it from you?
They do multiple times, but I mean, the points never fall off if they start to accumulate after a while. So once
I'm
you
so glad I don't know this.
Yeah. So once you accumulate enough points, they are, typically once you've gone to jail for a short period of time, as a reminder that you probably shouldn't drink and drive, then those DUI offenses stack and it stays on your record forever. So when I pulled his, I'm the executive of his estate. So when he died, so I was like, fuck it, I'm going to DMV. I want to pull his record. So I pulled it and I was
That's like
like, oh,
championship level
wow.
DMV points.
God, I know, really. It's like, I mean, I think he was going for the high score. I'm not sure what the high score is, but in Virginia. So it's, there are a lot of his records that I've tried to break over the years. I think that's one I'm probably gonna, just let go. But so, but it was terribly self-destructive. I mean, and things like that. So, I'm very grateful that while he had his fair share of speeding tickets and DUI infractions and things like that, nobody ever got hurt, so that's good. And It never resulted in any accidents or anything else like that, so that was also good. But like you said, just because you're high functioning doesn't excuse the behavior. So, and I think with weed and things like that. I mean, even things as bad as opioids and a bunch of other stuff. I mean, there's plenty of stuff to abuse these days, and some of these guys are out there, abusing whatever it is. So it's hard to say, but the but no, I think that
Yeah, I mean women too, but I
yeah,
just
I
see
mean,
my
women get caught
female
up.
friends like more forgiving of the behavior, you know?
Yeah, well, I think that there are other survival instincts that kick in for women long before it gets to be a real problem. I mean, not all the time, but I think more times than not, something else will kick in. But it's funny. You mentioned the uh, oh gosh, I lost my train of thought there. I was going back to the guys for a minute, and so I don't know. I lost that thought. Oh well, it'll come back to me. But shit. But no. Oh, we were talking about. Geez. We were talking. No, we were talking about high functioning females. So I've been in the research I've been doing for my book that I've been working on for the last year or so. It's curious. I have found that there is literally a new class of women, that are 18 to 35 that I typically refer to them as alpha females, and it's amazing how low of a tolerance they have for the bullshit that men bring to the table. And it's I guess because they realize their own value, their own worth, and that they have options and things like that. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my cousin put up with a lot of stuff in her relationship, and I've seen it a lot. Like I said, with my female friends, that they will tolerate
Yeah.
an extensive amount.
I think eventually they wise up. I mean, eventually people get some perspective on the situation, and it's difficult. I think when, especially when you're cohabitating, it's difficult. I mean, apartments are $1,300 to $1,500 a month for the cheapest one you can find, and it's not too bad if you're contributing $700 a month towards that. But it's like try doing another 700 or another 800 on top of the 750 you're doing already. It's kind of tough. So
Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, I think I think that's the hardest thing is that people trying to exit a difficult situation. I don't think they're financially. It's very difficult because people get so financially intertwined that it makes it difficult to extract yourself from that situation without undue financial ruin. And so I think people continue to hope that they're going to be able to get that person to get a clue, and unfortunately they don't always do that. But so
Yeah, this kind of goes back to my first point, though, about like independence,
hmm
right?
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that, and I think it, the, um, and of course, there are lots of people that are strongly independent, and like you said, don't want or don't need somebody in that equation, and it's just that, like you said before, expenses are ridiculously high, and so you have to get to a certain level of financial stability before you can kind of even contemplate that. I mean, it's very difficult, and I don't see income and opportunities keeping up with the rise in expenses and stuff like that. When you look at it's like, okay, well, rent used to be down here, now it's up here, and your income has risen from here to here, but the gap continues to persist, and that makes it pretty hard.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why you have to put yourself in the best situation so
Yep.
you can make the choices that you want.
So if you have any tips for the guys out there who don't want to be complete, jerks for the rest of their lives, any tips for the guys that are tuning in? That it's like, look, guys, women think you guys are completely out of your mind, or completely a waste of time, or completely useless, or whatever. I mean, you got any tips for? Well, I'm just saying. I'm not putting words in your mouth. I'm just saying that there are these there are these divergent opinions of men and their potential usefulness to alpha women, and I'm just curious what your thoughts are, and
Yeah, I think being supportive of what they want in their lives, and not just thinking about themselves.
yeah,
Um, so ensuring that if something were to happen down the road, that they would be set to take care of themselves as well. I think that's a caring thought. It's not intended to say I don't intend to, I don't plan to be with you forever, but I do care about you enough to know that, if something were to happen, that you would be okay. I think that's important. I think it's important to to be kind all the time and to be a good listener. I think a lot of men just think about themselves and think about what their agenda is, and then they move forward with that.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think that one of the things that I was talking about the other day was the fact that every relationship, whether it's, you can't say it's bad or good, it just helps you get to the next relationship, and it kind of changes your trajectory of where you're going and things like that. So if two people collide and then they keep going for a while and then they break apart, that kind of changes the magnitude and direction of where you're headed in your life. And it can slow you down, or it can speed up things, or it can change your course of direction, but it helps you intersect with the next opportunity that you wouldn't have had an opportunity to intersect with, if that wasn't the case, if you hadn't run into that relationship. And so I'm curious what you think about the idea of, no relationship is necessarily going to last forever. Even with the idea that one person, you've been married 50 years, and one person dies before the other, and the other person lives for another 5 years. That relationship still didn't last forever. It lasted a long damn time, but it still doesn't last forever. Any thoughts on that concept?
Like I said before, make sure the other person is going to be okay after that relationship ends. I think that's really important. I think that is that's love second to none, and to put the other person minimally as an equal, but to think about them before yourself sometimes, or most of the time, or all of the time. But and to also think about the relationship as a unit. I think sometimes in these relationships where they seem to go downhill, it's usually because one person is thinking about themselves and what they're going to get out of the relationship, and that's typically how it ends. They see what they can get out of it, and then the other person is giving, thinking the other person's eventually going to get back, and then it self-destructs. So if that's how the relationship starts to spiral towards the end. I mean, it really, if the relationship is going to end, and you have given so much to the other person, what have you gained from that other than a lesson? Which is valuable, I guess. But time is also of the essence too, right? Like,
That's
how
right.
old are you? What years have you given up? What have you sacrificed? Have you sacrificed what you wanted to do with your career? Have you sacrificed how you're going to move forward in your life? Have you sacrificed the time you may have spent looking for someone else? What else is there? So
Yep.
you still have to think about yourself. You have to love yourself. You have to, you love the other person, you need to love yourself too. So, and if you have children involved, obviously they're,
Yeah, there are additional responsibilities
essential.
there for sure.
Yeah.
No, I think that's exactly
Yeah.
right. In fact, I've seen too many of my friends who, she worked like crazy to put him through medical school, and he's gone through 7 years of medical school, and they've been together 10 years and things like that. Then all of a sudden he's done with his residency. They met when he was in last year of pre-med and she was, in college, and they made it work for like 10 years. But then all of a sudden, then she wants to go back to school to do something. And then all of a sudden, now he's like, no, I'm good, thanks. And then he leaves. And it's like, whoa, dude, you just took 10 years of this person's life. They worked their ass off, 3 jobs, so you could graduate from medical school with no debt and pay for all of the expenses along the way and all this other stuff. And now you're just going to check out of the relationship. I mean, there needs to be some kind of, some kind of penalty clause on that deal because, I mean, I think that's one of the things that, it really kind of sparked the opportunity to talk about this today in my broadcast the other day was the fact that, I think that the years of 18 to 29 are probably the most important years of anybody's life. And, I wish I had traveled more. I wish I had worked less. I wish I had done a bunch of things differently. I got married at 27 and divorced at 30 and had dated dated my first wife, from the time I was 24 and things like that. So, I wasted like 7 years, essentially 6 to 7 years. And I think that, my biggest regret is, first of all, wasting 7 years on a relationship that wasn't going anywhere. But, like you said, too, the same is on the other side. I mean, so you have a woman who's involved in a relationship with a very selfish guy that's taking advantage of the relationship. And he stays in it as long as he's getting what he wants out of the relationship. And then, boom, he's gone. And, that's it. And now, she's 32 or something like that. And it's like, okay, so, from 22 to 32, all that time's gone. Now, what do you do now? I mean, it's really kind of, unnerving that, people can just sort of come and go out of a relationship that easily. I mean, it's unfortunate.
Right, right. Yeah, so I think it's just important to, when you're in those years, 20, whatever, you still have to focus on yourself. You always have to focus on yourself, right? So
That's right.
whatever you're doing in the relationship is, you still go to school, you still move your career forward, help your spouse or
Yep.
your significant other, whatever, but you still need to make sure that you're moving forward in whatever you do.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it has to be a win-win for both people. I think, most relationships are pretty one-sided. Even if it's a sort of an 80-20 or 90-10 kind of win, you see very little of the sort of evenly split win in terms of, there's equal benefit for both parties, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So any other thoughts you wanted to share today before we run out of time?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, we've got about 7 or 8 minutes left, and I promised to touch on a couple of other subjects. So I was gonna do that, and you're welcome to hang out, or not. It's all good. So, but the topic that I was asked about was something called success bias, and the asking about whether or not the YouTube and Instagram and all the influencers are focused primarily on only the people who succeed. And so I thought the question was a little absurd at first, and then I started thinking about it because there are plenty of people on YouTube and Instagram that have failed. And they were talking about, well, most of the people on Instagram and YouTube talk about their successes. And I started doing a little bit of research, and I mean, there are people that have made a following, larger followings than mine, who have, committed some crime, gone to prison, and they have a channel that's completely about, talking about, how they survive prison and things like that. So it's amazing. So survivor bias and success bias is pretty much the same thing. Survivor bias is what what they were talking about. But see, survivor bias is really more of an issue of like if you survive a plane crash or other things like that. So survivor bias isn't necessarily what you might think. But so that's why the term, I don't really agree with the term, but I do agree in concept with the idea that I think Instagram and YouTube focus more on the people that have been successful at something. I'm a successful Forex trader. I'm a successful Bitcoin trader. I'm a successful this, that, and the other entrepreneur. I'm a successful investor. I'm a successful real estate agent. I'm a successful whatever. And a lot of that it has, you don't talk about all the 10 different things they failed at or the 10 deals they failed at or things like that. And even I haven't done that. I mean, I've had successes and failures in my career in terms of projects that we did or deals we did or companies we started and things like that. So, maybe I'll take it as a lesson and we'll talk about some of the failures one day. But again, it's survivor bias is fine. Maybe they're the people who survived successive failures, but I don't necessarily believe. I'd like to think of it as more of a success bias, so that they've been successful. They focus on what makes them successful, and then that tends to be the thing they focus on. Survivor bias, again, is if a plane crashes and 218 people on board and only 2 people survive, those people are survivors. There is, other survivor bias. If you survive a major illness, people that survive school shootings and things like that, there is survivor bias in their perspective on things. So I don't think survivor bias is necessarily the right name for it. I don't know what the right name for it is, but I will say that there are people on Instagram and YouTube that do focus on all the things they fucked up. So there is failure on YouTube and failure on Instagram. It is not as common as the successes. So there are more people that focus on success than failure. But it is an interesting, observation by, I don't know, Javier, are you the one that brought the idea forward originally? So let's see, for every Steve Jobs, there are a million people who failed. Yeah, okay, I get that. I mean, I get that, Javier. Or are you the one that asked the question originally? I don't remember what your Instagram handle is, but and I appreciate you hanging out, knowing the time zone difference and everything else, until the end here. But I wanted to get to your question. I mean, I think you have a valid point in terms of the fact that there are lots of people out there who don't have a following on social media. And I found a couple of guys, in some niche areas that I was looking at something, and these guys have like 1,000 followers or 1,300 followers and things like that. And some of them have been very successful, some of them haven't. But you don't know about them because you're not searching on the right terms, or they haven't tagged all their stuff. I mean, I haven't tagged any of my stuff at all. So the fact that anybody even finds my stuff is a miracle. But I think that there are a number of ways to look at this, a number of ways to kind of conceptualize it, but I think that the idea of survivor bias, especially when you talk about the 10 most, important billionaires out there and things like that, the richest people in the world, we love talking about the people who really made it big. But there's lots of people every day who turn out a great living and do some amazing things that aren't Bill Gates and aren't Larry Ellison and aren't Steve Jobs and things like that. So, and there's lots of people who, were coming up at the same time and failed miserably. So, but, that's my answer for survivor bias versus, I think, success bias is really kind of what I would, lots of companies survive, but barely. And, they're marginally successful. So I would really consider it more of a success bias than anything else. So anyway, I got a minute left, and I wanted to say thank you to everybody. I'm sorry that I was late today. And I know the topic may not be something, as we start doing more business and relationship stuff, I'll try to, make sure we talk about in advance what we're going to cover. I'm sorry for starting so late, but hey, listen, I'm enjoying scheduling calls and talking to you guys. If you want to go to gordonmiller.com, you can click on the booking link and book a call. It's been a lot of fun. I've made some great connections for people. We have a number of really amazing deals underway. And So William, if you go on Instagram, you'll find it at Instagram /Gordon.Miller. And it'll replay here. Also at youtube.com/Gordon Miller. You can watch it on that. It takes several hours to upload to YouTube. It should be available almost immediately again on my profile on Instagram. Emmy, thanks a lot. Appreciate that. It was a great time. Thank you guys so much.